Mark Lubavitch is a CBS News contributor and chief national correspondent for the New York Times Magazine. He's in our Washington bureau. All right, so Mark, let's start with these Twitter comments from President-elect Trump. Would you have expected him to show more restraint, as he suggested to Leslie Stahl?
Not entirely based on precedent. I mean, look, he had started tweeting about protesters the other night. I mean, this was like less than, I think, 2 or 3 days after he was elected president. So he said something about the protests against his election were unfair. He blamed the media. He did a bit of a mea culpa, or at least a reversal a few hours later. I think the points he made to Leslie Stahl were very valid in some ways. I mean, I think the power of social media, there's obviously never been a presidential candidate, let alone a presidential elect, who has leveraged that like Donald Trump has. And I think he made an accurate point about how it was in a way democratizing, and it was able to help him get his word out without spending the hundreds of millions of dollars that other campaigns did. The question is, how does that translate into the White House and what we're going to see? Based on this morning's tweet storm against us, which, it's not the first time and I doubt it will be the last time, it would indicate that he's going to be pretty free about using it, and whether these were restrained tweets and whether they were less restrained in their pre-edited form, or whether they were edited at all, or whether he just sort of grabbed his phone and put that out there, I'm not sure. But I think it's clearly going to be part of his repertoire, and I think we'll probably see more of it.
Trump seems to be softening on some of his signature proposals. He says he's open to keeping some parts of Obamacare. He says he'll accept a fence instead of a wall at some points on the southern border. Is this just part of going from campaigning to governing?
Maybe to some degree. I mean, he had hedged a little bit on the wall earlier in the campaign. I mean, he had allowed for the possibility that there could be fencing. I mean, basically, you're dealing with words here. And I mean, I assume, if he's able to build something, it will be protective. And I mean, he said, like, this is what he does. So, I mean, I do think, though, that this is not really the first sign that he has given that he's open to something other than a hard, brick wall over, thousands of miles. So, yeah, I mean, I think there is obviously a shift that goes on. I mean, the question is, this is someone who got elected on being very, very bold. He was perceived as being very, very bold, often unrealistic, and we'll see what he determines to actually make his priorities.
Lastly, Mark, you have a story in the Times Sunday magazine called Trump and the Presidential Look. You say that you noticed something when Donald Trump walked out to give his victory speech Wednesday morning. What was that? Well,
I mean, I'm always curious to see a president the first time as president, or a president-elect for the first time publicly after they are elected. I mean, I will never forget seeing President Obama in Grant Park 8 years ago, the moment he became president-elect, and coming out and seeing just a completely different face, a completely different aura around him. Gone was just the giddiness and the excitement of the campaign trail, and all of a sudden it was like a sobriety had fallen over him that I hadn't seen before. I noticed the same thing with Donald Trump the other night, which I found, somewhat heartening, given that he it wasn't exactly, humility wasn't exactly what he led with during the campaign. He looked a little stunned, maybe a little nervous. Obviously, I can't say for sure, but it was definitely a new look that I had seen, and I noticed it also when he was in the Oval Office with President Obama the other day. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is a very different job. He knows this, and there's going to be a very slow but steady realization of that as he folds himself into this new role.
All right. Mark Lubavitch, thanks so much.
Great. Thanks, Elaine.